Yo, Pierre, you want to come out here?
All right, welcome back to episode 2 of the Opportunity Knocks podcast. My name is Mateo. I'll be your host for today. And joining me virtually is one of the most storied reps in Vantage Marketing's history. He has been with us for 18 seasons. He started back in 2007. He was the two-time rep of the year. He has gone 4 summers doing the most sales out of any rep that we've had. 2 times he sold over $500,000 in a single season, which is no small feat. He's done over 2.5 mil in career sales, and 2 times he's done over 250,000 in annual personal sales commissions. This is none other than the shark himself, Mr. Jordan Earl. Welcome, Jordan.
Oh, thank you, Mateo. Nice to be here. That was a very kind intro. Appreciate it.
Thank you. You got quite the rap sheet here. I couldn't memorize it. I had to just write it all down and kind of bang it out.
Right.
But yeah, what we kind of want to do here is we want to go through the story of kind of how you got started and how you became the killer salesperson that you are. So if we can just go back in time to those early days, and even before you even heard about Vantage, just who were you back then? You know, what were you about?
Sure. Yeah. Well, like many of the students and non-students alike that come and work with us, I heard about this job from a friend. Mm-hmm. The friend I heard about it from was Brendan Quinlan, our CEO, and he and I, we spent both of our first summer in Jacksonville, Florida, working with the Vantage team, knocking on doors and slanging pest control. So Brennan likes to say that first year Rookie of the Year award's a little bit up for debate because he did beat me in the regular season, but I stayed a little bit longer. I actually postponed my next semester of school because I wanted to climb up to the next like pay level. And I certainly would not suggest that for everyone. I think a lot of times that's not at all a good decision, but for me at the time it was a good decision to put off that next semester. And I stayed. In the month of September, I did 103 accounts, which I very proud of because my goal was 100 and I beat it by 3. I actually won the very first gen iPod Touch. That was my award for servicing over 100 accounts in the month of September. Yeah. And then I actually stayed until October 10th. And from October 1st to 10th, I serviced another 43 accounts in the first 10 days of October. And I think there might have been a couple Sundays in there as well. So for me, honestly, when I first started doing this job, I picked up on it a little bit slowly. Mm-hmm. I remember my first day. I'll never forget it. I have to admit, unlike some of the guys, I don't remember the name of my first customer, but I remember the sale very vividly. I remember this was in Florida. He had insect activity in the kitchen cabinets, invited me in. He's like, yeah, come have a look at it. Here I am on my first day. I'm going inside, I'm opening up cabinets, looking underneath, going, yep, you've got bugs, that's for sure.
Yeah, did you know what you were looking for?
Yep, you should do this service. We didn't have as great a training program back then. I wasn't 100% certain what I should charge. It actually ended up being my most expensive contract of the year that I sold because I charged too much. So that was kind of a good first experience. At that time, crazy expensive was $700 for the year. Versus now that would be actually below our minimum charge rates that we're even allowed to do. But at that time, the average charge rate was around $400 a year. So things have changed a lot. Obviously, a lot of years have passed. But yeah, I sold him service. I do remember, though, going into my second week on the job, I actually had 4 days in a row in my second week where I sold nothing. So I went out 0, went out the next day 0, the third day 0, the fourth day 0. And I remember my manager, Jared, coming to me and being a little worried. He was like, how you doing? Like, are you going to leave? Are you going to keep doing this? And I was like, oh no, like I'm good. I understand. I know I'm just learning how to do this. Honestly, great. I had some success in the first week, not a ton, but a little taste of it. And no, like I'm here. I'm here to learn, and I know this is going to take some time. And I started to get more consistent throughout that first 4 months. For me, it was May, June, July, August, my first 4 months on the door. Brendan Quinlan, our CEO, he finished around 200, I think a little over 200 within those first 4 months, and I was below him. I seem to recall I was around 175. But then he went back. He had to do his internship. He's a teacher by trade, so he had his his practicum, where he was actually going to be working in a classroom, working with teachers to finish his degree, working with students. And so he could not put that off, but I could, and I did. And I sold about 145-ish more accounts in the next month plus 10 days. I climbed up a couple brackets, and I ended up finishing the highest volume of sales for a rookie sales rep in the company at that time, which was about 330 sales, 330 some odd sales. I ended up doing that first season, which I was thrilled about.
Well, I guess it's like the tortoise versus the hare, right? We always say it's a marathon, not a sprint. And, you're able to stretch it out a little bit longer. Definitely. And so at that time, how would you characterize kind of what your personality was? Were you this extroverted go-getter, I'm going to grind out there, or were you more reserved? Take us back to that time.
Yeah, I might even been a little bit more extroverted then than I am now. I was young, I was hungry, I was enthusiastic. I wasn't that young. I was actually 22 that first season. So I was 21 when I first knocked the door for pest control, but I turned 22 a few days into the season. My birthday is May 3rd. So after a couple of days of knocking doors, I had my 22nd birthday. So really I was 22, which I think by the standards today, we get so many young guys and young women starting at 18 years old, 19 years old with us now. I'm so jealous. I like to look back and say, oh my gosh, if I'd started when I was 18, I wonder what I would have done by the time I was 22, which ended up being my first season. But I had a really positive experience and a lot of success that first year. So I'm glad that I started when I did, even if it was a little bit older by today's kind of standard.
Yeah. And so let's compare going out there in summer number 1 with going out there in summer, 12, 13, 14. How do those habits and strategies change? Is it just a mindset difference? Is it just better planning? So what's the difference between those two people?
Well, I didn't know what to expect the first year. That was the biggest difference of all. I went down there, like I said, young, hungry, enthusiastic, excited to be there, excited to see what I could do, but really not sure at all what to expect. I'd never knocked on a door and sold pest control service before. That's for darn sure. So this was a new concept to me. In fact, when I first heard about the company, I did some research. I remember it was a little tougher to research online 18 years ago, but I asked Jared, shout out to Jared Taylor. I asked Jared, I was like, it was my manager who'd hired me. I was like, yo, can you send me some pictures of the service trucks, of the office?
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I know this thing is real. At that time, there was no Vantage Canada. There was only Vantage US. So staying in Canada was not an option for me. So both Brennan and I, we went down to Jacksonville, Florida, our first summers, Jayville. But I was kind of worried. I was like, oh my gosh, is this real? Can I really make money doing this? And so, yeah, the biggest difference, to come back to your question, was I just did not know what to expect that first season. And it was hard and kind of scary traveling all that way to go down there and do that. I remember my stepfather actually drove down with me because they were kind of worried that I was going to do this super weird job that they didn't really want me to do, to be honest.
Common theme for sure.
And then if I were to fast forward to your question to year 12, it was just I know exactly what to expect. I know that if I go out, I put in my hours, I do my thing, I'm going to get my sales. And the same thing for my team members, if I had team members working with me, which I'm not sure in year 12 if I did or not, because there was a number of years, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where I actually took a step back from managing, took a step back from leading, and I actually just went back on the doors. And for me, I had managed, I had led, I had a key leadership role in the organization for many years. And I just kind of wanted to take this step back and see what I could really do just focusing on sales. And that was when I went out and had a couple of those banner years that you were just talking about, those 500,000 sales years, those 250K commission earnings years, those golden door years. And I'm glad I did that, because I think through that experience, I was able to show what you can really accomplish in this industry. And certainly in Canada, where at that time it was very new, right? And so we didn't know what you could really do in a season. We didn't have 20, 25, 30 years of door knock and pest control history in this country. And so part of what we had to do when Vantage Canada started up north of the border here, which was coming up on 10 years ago, was we had to show that this program would work here. We had to show that people would buy this service and that you could sell this and you could sell a lot of it, and that there was a real need and a desire for this service. And so that was a big part of what I took on my shoulders when we came up to Canada. And I really did focus more so just on my personal sales rather than team building and leading, and had some of those really big years. So back to your question, what was the difference? Just knowing what to expect and having been through it and feeling much more comfortable with it, which admittedly is the exact opposite of how everyone feels when they first do this job, me certainly included.
Definitely. And so if you had a rep in front of you, and let's say they've come back for a year or two and they're trying to decide, should I go down the management route or should I just hunker down and become like an Evan Kiz type of person, or like you were back in the day, where I'm going to go there and sling as many accounts as possible. I'm going to try to get to 1,000 accounts in the summer. I'm going to take home a huge commission check. And hey, I'm going to live the rest of my year traveling, right? Or just enjoying life versus the other path of, I'm going to go out there and recruit. I'm going to have this big team with me. Is it different personalities? Is it just different goals out of what you want at the end of the day? And how would you guide that person who's kind of at that fork in the road?
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily different personalities, because I've gone and done both paths. And I started as a rep, then went into leadership and management. Then when we came to Canada, bounced back to kind of really being, like you said, a lone wolf. And then since then have kind of grown back into a leadership role here in Vantage Canada. So I don't think it's the person. I don't even think it's necessarily your goals. I think it might just be like where you are at in your life and mentally and emotionally, what you're wanting to put your energy into. Because being a leader is hard. It's challenging. It's I don't want to say it's harder than going out and selling 400, 500, 600 accounts, because that's very, very hard to do mentally, emotionally. It's tough. You got, for every sale, there's a heck of a lot of no's that you got to deal with. So that can be a challenge, certainly in and of itself, and it absolutely is. But I think that leading and building and growing a team is also very challenging. And so I think if you're looking at both tracks, it really just doesn't come down to necessarily, I think, what your goals are, because I think you can end up at the same place no matter the path that you take to get there. I think it almost depends on where you are in your own growth, your own development, and just sort of what you're wanting to focus on at this time. And there's certainly nothing wrong with going out there and being a top rep for a few years. And I think in some ways that can even better prepare you for a leadership or management route.
Well, it's definitely helpful to have the skins on the wall, right? I've sold, $500K in revenue the past few years. So it definitely goes a long way with belief. And now, so if we talk about you as a manager, right? So lone wolf now to the manager side. And in the same way that each and every sales rep on the ground is going to have a different approach to sales, and maybe it meshes with their personality in some special way. But what's your approach to managing people? Is there a specific Jordan Earl spin on it, or is it a collection of different things you've picked up from different sales trainers over the years? Just take us through kind of what your methodology is.
Yeah, certainly a collection of things. I mean, I'm blessed to have been very close friends and business partners with Brendan Quinlan for 18 years now. And so I've picked up a lot from him. He's such an exceptional leader, and he's so great at motivating and working with young men and women and helping them achieve everything that they want to and that they can, and facilitating that for them. He's so gifted in that way. And so I've learned a lot from him and paying close attention to how he's done that. I definitely put my own spin on those things. I don't do them exactly how he does by any stretch. We're different in a lot of ways. We have similarities, but we have some pretty substantial differences too. So I think it's important that you bring your own personality into that. But there's nothing wrong with emulating someone who's had a lot of success, whether it be in sales or in leadership. I think for me, it's just trying to create and foster an environment of high performance, an environment where the culture is one of enthusiasm and excitement to be here and be doing this and be a part of this, and really focused a lot on personal growth and development. One of the series that we've started in the region, and I know it's been available to some of the other teams too, has been Tuesday Talks. That's a really fun series for me, where we bring in different entrepreneurs and people who have excelled in other areas, sometimes in sales, but sometimes in areas that have nothing to do with sales, and having them present their sort of story and their experience to the team. We start those about midway through the summer and run those towards kind of weekly until we get close to the end of the summer. Those are something that I think speaks to personal development and growth, and creating an environment in which you're setting that up to foster, or excuse me, you're fostering that growth, you're fostering that development. And I think creating an environment in which that can really grow and develop is pretty important to me on a leadership side. And then also just supporting and coaching those who I'm working with while being careful not to manage the teams for them, because I think you have to learn how to go out and do that yourself, and you have to put your own spin on things as a leader and as a manager. And so for the leaders and the managers that I work with within the region and within the team now, I think for me it's just about trying to create an environment in which I encourage growth and development, where I encourage them to figure things out for themselves, but I'm also here as a coach and a support system, so that if they're struggling, or even if they're not and they're not sure what they're struggling with, hopefully I can create sort of a situation in which they can be coached and learn and grow and try and get the best result from themselves and from their team.
Yeah, definitely. And it can be difficult when you're trying to teach people how to manage, to know when to give them enough slack so that they can make their own mistakes, and when to give them, too much slack and they've had something disastrous happen. So throughout all the years of your experience, can you take us through some of those hard lessons, maybe a time or two where you got kicked in the teeth and you had to, stand up, dust yourself off, and kind of what you took from that?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that if I look back in recent years, something that I've been fairly aggressive on is like expansion and growth and going into new cities and new markets. And I think on occasion, there's a time that I can look back maybe the previous year and say, you know what, maybe I would have been smarter to go for density rather than just trying to put so-and-so out in a new environment and having them succeed in this new office, a new city, a new team, a new place. And I think sometimes that what may have been a better result for the region, for the team, for me, and for the manager and their sales reps sometimes might have been just going with more density and having them work maybe in partnership with another manager. And so something in the region that we've focused on a lot over the last year or two is making sure that we don't put our up-and-coming leaders, or rather making sure that we put our up-and-coming leaders in a position where they are most likely to succeed. And what that means is sometimes not sending them out on their own when they might want to be in a brand new city with their own team, but sometimes pairing them up and putting them together, allowing them to support and work with one another as their own support system too. And then, like we've seen with some guys like Phil and Eloi, who are two young up-and-comers, rookie managers of the year last year, co-managed a team that worked both in Quebec City as well as in Montreal. And then this year, going into 2024, they're splitting and they're each running a team. And not only that, but they've had some young leaders from their teams who are going to be stepping into leadership roles this year as well. And so I think that something that I've maybe learned the hard way a little bit here and there has been that, hey, more and new cities and being on your own isn't always the only way, or sometimes isn't necessarily the best way for growth and learning and development within the team, and also for those new managers. Sometimes being with someone who's either done it before, or even just with someone else who's learning it for the same time, but you can co-manage a team together, oftentimes can be the best thing, and then of course can lead to splitting and separating teams in the following year, as it has for Phil and Eloi. Phil, who will be running Montreal here, or one of the Montreal teams, and Eloi, who will be running the Quebec team, and both of them, again, who have leaders who've moved up within their respective programs too, which is so awesome to see.
Yeah, that's definitely the perfect setup, to have two managers with complementary skill sets and maybe even at different levels of experience to really help each other out. And if there's any people that are new to management listening, what advice would you give to them for building that relationship of trust with your managing partner, and then also just finding out how to get the best results out of the people that you're there to promote and learn and teach?
Pick your partner well. Pick your partner well. You're going to be in a relationship with them for the next year, potentially, starting recruiting, going right through managing through the summer, and then potentially postseason. So make sure that you're picking someone who you're prepared to spend a tremendous amount of time with for the next year, and that this is someone you trust, who follows through on what they say they're going to do. Make sure that you're the type of person who follows through on what you say you're going to do when you're going to do it. And just make sure that you pick your partner well, because it's a very important relationship. I've seen it go amazingly. I've seen it go not so well.
Yeah, that's tough. I can definitely go both ways. Okay, cool. Well, so now a couple things I want to try to pull out of this are just some of the high level, like maybe not specific to sales itself, but just the life lessons you've pulled out of this door-to-door game. I mean, we talk about how many people you interact with on a day-to-day basis throughout the summer. You knock on 100 doors a day, 100 days throughout the summer. We're talking to thousands of people over the years. You get to meet every type of culture and background and type of person. And so having seen all these people and knocked in the States and in Canada, what I guess, high-level life lessons do you have, whether it's sales or otherwise, that you want to bestow upon, this new cohort and this new generation of sales leaders that we have coming in?
Yeah, for sure. Well, if you don't mind, I'm going to reference one of my favorite books, a book that I've gifted to all of our managers here in the region last year that I'll be passing out again, fresh copies to the new managers this year. But it's The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino. Some of our listeners may have read that themselves. If they haven't, recommend it. It's an excellent one. It's told in the format of an old fable or an old story, and it's not just about becoming the greatest salesman in the world, which is what you'd expect from the title, but really about succeeding a lot in life and in situations that you find yourself in. And my favorite lesson from that book is within the book. It's told as a fable, so it's the Scroll Mark III. And that lesson is, I will persist until I succeed. And so for me, that's probably just been the biggest thing, because I've had down years, I've had down months, I've had terrible days knocking, I've had terrible weeks knocking. And the biggest thing for me is that I just keep going. And if I have a superpower, that's my superpower. I won't stop. I won't give up. You cannot hold me down. It may not be today. It may not be tomorrow. It may not even be this year, but I will persist until I succeed. Plain and simple.
Damn, words of wisdom there. Now, I do want to ask you, so what kind of impact have books had upon your career? Have you been a big time reader? You were a podcast guy? Where do you get your information from?
Yeah, I mean, I enjoy both reading as well as listening to audiobooks, podcasts, of course. I'm a pretty big audio guy. I really like that format. For me, it was always great when I was knocking doors as a sales rep because I could have it loaded up and playing on the stereo when I was driving in the car out to area or coming back at the end of the night. If I was at the gym, I often had a sales book or a podcast or an audio book going. And so I would say like a big impact on my life for sure. I mean, there's some of the classics that we encourage, if not verge on require every single one of our sales reps to read. So Sales Superstar Series by Tim Mulcahy, a real Canadian success story. Shout out to Tim. We've had Tim's been gracious enough to do some speaking events for us before through audio and video, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. He's such a skilled person. He's been so successful in his life. He's a guy who's 100 millionaire, and he's done that through the door-to-door industry. He started doing it back in the 80s. And so his series, Sales Superstar, has been a really impactful series on my life. The book Door to Door Millionaire by Lenny Gray, another classic. Lenny's a veteran of the industry down in the United States. Books written to be applicable to a wide variety of door-to-door industries, but really focused on pest control because that's where he cut his teeth. I found that book to be really impactful. All of the Zig Ziglar series, including the classic Secrets of Closing the Sale. That's the first Zig Ziglar book I ever read. Yeah. My father was in sales, so I remember being like maybe 16, 17 years old and stealing that book off his bookshelf, Zig Ziglar's Secrets of Closing the Sale. I still have that original copy. It's marked up. There's writing in the margins. There's tons of sticky notes on the pages. It's actually sitting on my bookshelf back home in my home office. All of Zig Ziglar's books, though, his whole See You at the Top series is really, really impactful. Tony Robbins, really great. I like a lot of Tony Robbins stuff. I found it to be really positive and, again, just really impactful on me. So that's to name a few. I mean, I could keep going, I'm sure, but I think if I was going to keep it to 4 or 5, those would be them.
Awesome. Well, it's a great reading list to have. It seems to be a common theme amongst a lot of our sales managers, readers are leaders sort of thing. And so take us through, you mentioned it a little bit earlier and you've dropped a few names throughout our talk here, but what is this organization you're building right now? Who are the key players that are coming up through the ranks, and who should we be on the lookout for going into this 2024 summer?
Yeah, so we're really excited. Obviously, we're a region within Vantage Canada. We're the Eastern Dynasty region. Shout out.
Yeah.
So really, really key guy there. Jordan Fiddler. Jordan Fiddler just made partner in Insight this year, so we're super excited for him. Oh my gosh, nothing but positive stuff coming out of that guy's program. He's really involved in the entire program in Quebec. He's really contributing a lot to Vantage Canada as a whole already, which is so amazing to see. He's very involved in both the Toronto and Ottawa offices, where he has sales reps and actually a previous assistant manager and a couple of really successful sales reps who have moved into leadership roles on both those teams. So really excited for Jordan Fiddler. Obviously, Phil and Éloi, who I'd mentioned before, they're really helping us expand the French language program here in Quebec. Parce que je parle français, I speak French, but it's not my it's not the greatest. It's not perfect.
Yeah.
I grew up speaking English for sure. Was blessed to have had my parents put me in French immersion school back growing up. So that was a helpful base to come out here to Quebec for the first time. And that's where I live now, is in Montreal. We didn't mention that, but born and raised in Winnipeg, the 204, but living in Montreal, where I've been going on 6 years now. Other young leaders we have, oh my gosh, like Doria Belhal, female rookie of the year last year. Andrew Ferguson won the Grinder Award, platinum level performance, club level performance last year. Also just lost rookie of the year in all of Vantage Canada by a hair. Lost it to Jeremy out there in Alberta. Congrats to Jeremy for sure. But Andrew was our Eastern Dynasty Rookie of the Year and the second best performing rookie in Vantage Canada. So we've got some young guys, Cedric and Jeremy, who are going to be running our Central Quebec team this year. Man, we're so excited for big things coming out of Quebec, and those guys, we're really excited to see them grow and start to become a bigger part of it. And of course, Paula Ortiz, who was going into her third year with Vantage. She was an assistant manager here in Montreal last year and co-managing with Andrew, our Eastern Dynasty Rookie of the Year out in Ontario this year. So yeah, just so much, so many positive things coming out of this, so many great people. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just bringing the right people in, fostering their growth, encouraging them, working with them, coaching them. We meet regularly with all of our leadership team members. I meet weekly with every single one of them. And then just seeing them grow and develop has just been such an amazing thing to see. And I'm so excited to see how that's going to continue to happen and who our leaders of tomorrow are going to be.
Yes, sir. Well, that's definitely quite the lineup of hitters. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're a really busy guy, but we all appreciate those words of wisdom you have, Jordan. Any closing remarks, anything to tie it up here?
I guess just like to the audience, if this is mostly rookie sales reps who are thinking about doing this, just like give it a summer, give it everything you have and see what happens. Cause that was my outlook on it. I had a path. It was predetermined. It was picked. I knew what I was going to do. And then this opportunity came up and it really threw that plan into a tailspin and just flipped it on its head. I did not plan on doing this. And certainly when I came to do it, my intention was to do this for 1 year, make some money, and then kind of go back to the original plan, which was to work in financial services, which is the industry that my father works in. And, yeah, I mean, 18 years later, I'm still here. I've built a career that I'm proud of, worked up to an income level that, is awesome and exciting. So good income opportunity for sure. And moreover, I just get to work with my best friends and just such amazing people every single day. There's nowhere else I'd want to be. So if you're thinking about it, do it, give it a try. And if you're already doing it, man, am I excited for you. And I would just say, give it everything you got. Because if you do, holy smokes, there really is no limit.
Yes, sir. Well, opportunity is most certainly knocking these days. Lots of growth, lots of exciting things for the future. Thank you again, Jordan, and we'll wrap it up here. Thanks for joining us today.
Amazing. Thanks, Matteo. Appreciate it.